I am Nicole Lee. I'm the Alderwoman of the 11th Ward. For those of you unfamiliar with the 11th Ward, it encompasses the neighborhoods of Chinatown, Bridgeport, Armour Square, a little bit of McKinley Park, and some of Canaryville as well. So, a big landmark or a couple of big landmarks for folks to think about as they think about my ward are Guaranteed Rate Field, or Sox Park as we call it here in Chinatown. So the 11th ward is the first Asian majority ward in the entire city of Chicago. So about 51% Asian American here. Obviously, diverse population of Asian Americans that live here, and really the majority of those are mostly Chinese because we've got Chinatown, but have really been pleased to see the diversity in the Asian American community here because, excuse me, we are seeing some more South Asians moving into the neighborhood. We get a lot of students from IIT that take up residence in the 11th ward as well. It's diverse. It's an old Bridgeport is an old neighborhood, and we have a diverse population that is both Caucasian, Hispanic, and African American as well. My top policy priorities are really not very different than when I ran for office. Public safety is everybody's top priority. We've continued to just ongoingly work with the local police department. The Ninth District encompasses most of the 11th Ward, engaging with CAPS and the community to do everything that we can to keep the community safe and work together to do that. We need for constituents to participate in that process, and really is for our part making sure that we're connecting people to the resources and doing what we can to help the police know where things are happening as we hear about it as well. Development and affordability is something that is I think really important for our neighborhood here in the 11th Ward. A high population of seniors. I hear from seniors all the time who are on fixed incomes of their fears if they're homeowners, rising prices of taxes, then when they got their tax bills, and just fears of like, am I going to be able to live out my days here? So affordability is looming high on my mind. And I think the part of the way that we address that is increasing supply and density in the ward where that's possible. So I've been really proud that we've approved several projects to increase density. So rental apartment buildings, upzoning properties to multifamily from single family. It is something that I think is very ubiquitous here in the 11th ward and in many places in Chicago where you have multi-generational homes. Where, like myself, I live in a 3-flat with my family. I live on the 3rd floor with my boys. My parents live on the 2nd floor, and I've got an aunt who is a senior and single and lives on the 1st floor. I think it's very indicative of the community that we have here, and we're community of immigrants, obviously, but also people have been here for generations. Aside from the sort of development and affordability sort of going hand in hand, we've worked hard with the Department of the Planning and Development. I'm sorry, I need more coffee. The Department of Planning and Development to really look at what the landscape looks like in different areas of the 11th ward. So in particular, we're doing a market study. One of the questions that I posed to them, I sort of ended up in politics, not completely accidentally, but it was not really planned. So when I was asked, like, what's your vision for the future of the ward? I was like, I'm going to need a minute. And I hear consistently from constituents, we want a walkable neighborhood, we want more retail, we want this, we want that, and really trying to get some data to support, like, how do we get there? Like, if we want a Trader Joe's, how many rooftops do we need? Like, what are the sorts of things that brings a business like that in the ward? If we want another grocery store, what would that take? How much population do we need to support that? Because as we know, it's really expensive to open and run a business anywhere these days. I mean, I know that with small business owners who come in. So, what are the conditions that we can create that I have some influence over that will create the right conditions for our community to be more attractive for investment? Infrastructure is always something that also goes hand in hand with public safety. We need the lights to work, to keep the streets safe. In the evenings, make sure trees are trimmed so that they're not blocking lights, and also just to have it safe for people to be out and about. And obviously, the budget's going on right now, so I think a big priority for me this year in particular, as we ended last year, knowing what we were going to be facing in a budget deficit, that has been something that I've been keeping an eye on for the entire year. I'm the vice chair of the budget committee, so I've been following all of this very intimately and working very diligently with colleagues to, do what we can to keep Chicago on track and to keep the city running. Legislative wise, one big thing that happened this year around ADUs, that, it's good citywide now, but it's left to the alder people to sort of establish. So one of the things that is going to be a priority going into 2026 really is establishing what our policy is going to be here in the 11th ward. I know from feedback that I've gotten from constituents that there are lots of people that are interested in adding additional dwelling units, and then we've got people on the other side who have a lot of concerns about what that will mean. I've consistently added more density to the ward since taking office. And I've done that in a very thoughtful and deliberative and an engaging way. We do a community meeting for every single zoning change that we do. And I want to talk to the community and probably have a town hall or two about the issue, about how we create a fair process for it. So the way that the ordinance was passed, it really, you have to opt into it. And I have not opted into assigning any block face level areas where it's possible yet, because I do want to talk to the community about what the most sort of efficient and fair way of doing this is, and taking into account the sort of voices of the community. I mean, you have to live with your neighbors, but it's also, it's a city policy, and we've got an opportunity to influence that. So that's something that's going to be really big. I think that was impactful in 25, in that it's laying the groundwork for future development into the future 2026 as well. So one of the things that I'm really committed to is continue to move forward this conversation and actions on building a new field house at Donovan Park. Unfortunately, I think that we might get a little slowdown based on the fact that the massive TIF sweep that's happening with this budget is going to set us back a little bit for the 35th and Halsted TIF. But we're fortunate enough that TIF will replenish. We just have to wait for the tax dollars to come in. So I want to see movement there. I want to continue to work on the economic development of the ward, revitalizing the business corridors. We've seen more activity down on the south end of Halsted with the opening of the Ramova Theater that have been here for a long time now. It's a beautiful concert venue. If you haven't been yet, Chitra, you should come.
It's great. Wonderful. I went to a vintage market there. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So we're seeing more activity, right? So, and that's, we want to see more of that. And what else can we do? So working very closely with the Department of Planning and Development, trying to leverage the tools that they have, paired with the funds that we have in the TIF district, see what we can do to support small business development and just revitalization of the corridors. From going into 26, other things that I want to focus on are just continued infrastructure improvements. Looking at, we have big projects going on right now that are replacing really old infrastructure. So, knock on wood, we've been blessed not to really have been negatively impacted by all the rain that we've had in the last year. We're getting some new sewers. We're replacing lead service lines. Really is, for me, continuing to bring the resources back to the community, in particular those who are in greatest need. Obviously, with all of the things that are happening at the federal level and cuts that are happening there that have already had a real impact on our community, what we're faced with is, folks need things like food and help with rent. I mean, more and more folks are coming to me asking for help trying to find, more affordable housing, and it's difficult in this environment. So, we're constantly trying to develop new partnerships and relationships with the nonprofit organizations as well, the city can kind of only go so far. So I think we have to continue to sort of foster those relationships with nonprofits. Like Nourishing Hope is one that I think is starting to do more in the 11th Ward. We're trying to help build that up because we know there's need. Trying to make sure that we're continuing to work with the couple of local food banks that we have that do pantries once or twice a week, and making sure our schools have what they need. That is something that I do here in the 11th Ward. Is not every school, actually far fewer schools in the ward are in TIFs than are not. That just means that the pool of resources that are available looks very different. So what I've made a commitment to do is to every year while I'm in office, starting this year in 2025, we're setting aside $10,000 out of our menu money to give to a school to help with some of their unfunded needs from CPS. So that could be for playgrounds or contribute to a new field. That's in particular what we did this year. The Mark Sheridan Academy needed a new turf field for their playground, and their non-for-profit with the school had raised a certain amount of money. We contributed to that. I think we got them over the hump to get it done. It's a very modest amount of money, but it is money that menu money is set aside to benefit the ward, and I couldn't think of a better opportunity to do that while still balancing the other infrastructure needs of the ward. An ordinance to essentially have the Chicago Department of Public Health and Department of Family and Support Services disaggregate data on Asian Americans. That's something I'm looking forward to really taking up in committee and getting my colleagues up to speed on so that we can get that passed and begin. Look, I'm talking to Sapri right now, so I know you understand. And value and understand the importance of data disaggregation.
Absolutely.
I think that folks look at our community very monolithically, and we know that we are not. And we know that the needs vary by community, and even within communities. Within the Chinese American community here in my ward, we've got people like myself who have been here a few generations and are in a different place in our journey. And we have newer immigrant families who are just getting started and don't have the same types of resources. So to assume that every Asian American is like a doctor or a lawyer that owns all kinds of real estate is just really it's not a stereotype that helps our broader community. And
it's systemic erasure.
Yeah. I'm going to use that systemic erasure. I'm going to totally use that. And that's what it is, because it gives people an out to just ignore the real needs. And if we have data that can help inform where the services and resources go, we have a better opportunity to really impact the people who need it the most.